Cool. Okay, so this session is being recorded. I think we're in a position to kick off. So welcome everyone to Prosperon Networks in this morning's webinar on event-triggered diagnosis with SolarWinds and NetBrain. I'd like to start this webinar by introducing myself. My name is Mick Poe and I'll be your host this morning. I'm delighted to be joined for this session by our technical director, Mr. Mark Roberts, and Dr. David Spence, Senior Pre-Sales Engineer at NetBrain Technologies. Welcome to you both.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mick. Morning, folks.
I hope you're all both in good voice for today's session following last night's game. And
a little bit croaky. Good shouting at a big screen, though.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we conduct these webinars regularly. If you'd like to view any of our previous sessions, you can find these on our website and also our YouTube channel. If you are viewing on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button to help us reach out to more people around the world. For those of you active on social media, you can also connect with us via our LinkedIn and Twitter pages for more regular updates, tips and tricks. Okay, so introductions over, let's get stuck into the agenda for today's webinar. We're going to be looking at event-triggered diagnosis, what it is and how it can affect and help you and your organization can benefit. Throughout today's webinar, Mark and David will be demonstrating how SolarWinds and NetBrain work together to help you create dynamic diagrams of your network, automate troubleshooting diagnostic steps, and leverage network workflow integrations. This will ultimately help you diagnose, remediate, and resolve network issues faster. We'll be running a few polls during this session to keep it interactive. Please participate as your answers will help us with future webinars. As there may be a few questions on the content of today's session, please use the question section and this will help us answer the question, and we'll tackle these at the end of the session. Okay, so who are Prosperon Networks? Prosperon are a leading IT management reseller providing consultancy training to our customers. We partner alongside a number of leading technology vendors and have a long-standing relationship with SolarWinds, partnering with them for over 16 years and have played a part in the evolution of their solution and their training programs. We're the first partner to work alongside NetBrain here in the UK. And as a company, we've delivered over 800 professional services days last year and have resolved over 1,000 support tickets in-house. We have a team of 8 certified SolarWinds engineers and are fortunate enough to work with all kinds of customers, even on some top secret and sensitive deployments. We are proud to have been awarded the Technical Excellence Award by SolarWinds for the delivery of our projects. Mark Roberts has been a SolarWinds THWAC MVP for many years, sharing his thoughts and insight with the wider SolarWinds community. Okay, so as I touched on briefly, we chose to partner alongside NetBrain to help address the pains and challenges faced by our customers. NetBrain integrates well with SolarWinds and is designed to help improve visibility across your network when troubleshooting. NetBrain provides immediate diagnosis as well as helping you retain and share troubleshooting steps to resolve incidents faster, ultimately giving you more time to focus on what's important. Okay, so how can NetBrain help you? Well, NetBrain addresses some of the most common challenges faced by SolarWinds customers. Spending too much time troubleshooting and having a lack or no visibility at the time of the incident. The need to escalate too many tickets as first-line support cannot resolve issues themselves. Continually troubleshooting the same tasks over and over again rather than using automation. Figuring out the root cause and suitable next steps, which leads to slow resolution time. Sometimes issues are intermittent and out of hours, or there's a need just to track network changes, whether these are authorized or unauthorized. Companies spend hours, weeks, or even longer updating network diagrams, and sometimes organizations just have too many tools and don't know which ones to use. Okay, well, on that note, we're going to open up and move on to our first poll. So, what does your network triage procedure look like?
So we kind of want to have a look and see kind of where people are in that process. Are they getting all the information they need, whether it's tooling, whether it's a process thing? Clearly, automation is the big thing these days. And so taking advantage of that, moving into that sphere is a big part of what we are looking at here today. So how are we getting on with the polls? Please feel free to get involved in some votes there. I think, oh, we've got a first one in. Thank you. Everyone's still trying to recover from last night, I think. Okay, so yeah, manual, yeah. Good to see the service desk performing triage. We work with obviously a lot of customers, helping them with not just the tooling, but how the tooling affects what they do with that information and knowledge through their processes. And we see a big divide with service desks that are doing things versus service desks are just kind of looking and organizing and then saying, okay, this falls into this category, send this off to someone else. Well, for us, that tooling is going to help with that. The automation of saying, okay, this is a device that's owned by this team. This is the issue. Okay, now we know where this needs to be going to, whose eyes need to see it. So I think we've got the votes in there. So manual seems to be the main one. And so certainly that's kind of what we typically see with our customers. Dave, from your point of view, anything to add from that?
No, I mean, that's typical. That's a lot of the time, that's what we see in terms of network triage. And it's the same for documentation as well. A lot of the time we see documentation done in a very, very manual way too.
Fantastic. Okay, so over to you, Dave, for a moment.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So let me give you a talk through NetBrain. So let's just start. Let's just think about the modern technology that we use today. So I mean, I've been in IT for a long time now, and one of the things I've seen is how technology has changed and how our use of technology has changed. It used to be sort of a back office function, so you could survive without IT if it went offline for a while, or if systems failed, you could go back to pen and paper for a while. So that's certainly how it was back in the 1990s. But if you look at now in 2021, IT it's almost running the business. It's not just a back office function, it's a business driver. And if our applications aren't running correctly, or if they're performing poorly, then actually our business will be performing poorly. Well, it will be having a massive impact on our business. And if you think about that, actually our applications, they're running on our networks. So if our networks aren't performing correctly, or aren't performing as well as expected, then our applications won't be performing. And so having good functioning networks, having good documentation, and being able to fix things when they go wrong really quickly is actually really important. And what we're seeing here on the screen is we're seeing how we're seeing this gradual increase in complexity as we try and deliver this technology. The complexity is increasing. So you've got things like infrastructure changes. You're seeing, again, I hadn't really heard of software-defined networks until about 10 years ago. So you're seeing software-defined networks. You've also seen software-defined WAN as well. You're seeing the Internet of Things, that's exploding. Compliance, increasingly, when I talk to customers, compliance is becoming quite a topic now. And also environmental changes as well. So you're seeing this increased complexity of our networks, but actually the resources that we have at our disposal in order to achieve that and actually help us deliver that complexity, that's not increasing at the same rate. So what you've got here is a gap, and the aim of NetBrain is to actually close that gap. Another way of looking at it is we've got all of this complexity, and IT has changed so much over the last 10, 20 years. But actually, the way we manage our networks hasn't. We're still, if you could get a good CCIE from 1995, put him in a time machine and bring him back to today, he'd still be a good network engineer. But yeah, our networks, we're using them for things we never thought possible 20 plus years ago. And so it's all about that, trying to bridge the gap and enable the networks to be managed if you like, in a way which fits the 21st century. So let's have a quick look, moving on, to how NetBrain actually achieves that. So NetBrain takes that complicated environment, and it could be a mixture. If you look on the left here, you've got traditional networking, you've got software defined, you've also got the public cloud, and increasingly we're seeing that with customers. So NetBrain takes all of that, and so for things like your traditional networks, it will actually log in using CLI, SSH. For more modern networking equipment, it will use the RESTful API. And what it does is it builds a mathematical model of the entire network, a digital twin, if you like. And this will literally have thousands and thousands of metrics. And it enables NetBrain to completely model the network at the layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. So it builds a full topology. And you can do a number of interesting things with that. So if you see here for the dynamic map, we can map the network dynamically. And again, we can visualize any type of IT data. So if you think about this, if I'm trying to visualize quite a complex network, a mixture of legacy, software-defined, maybe software-defined WAN, maybe the public cloud, how do I actually visualize that? Without something like NetBrain, it's actually very tricky, but NetBrain can do that. But very importantly, once it's built this visualization, this dynamic map, we use that dynamic map as the user interface for automation. And again, one of the things, because I'll get on to do a demo in a minute, and I'll actually show you how that all works and how the map, it's not just a static thing. We call it a dynamic map for a reason. It's the user interface for automation. And actually what we can do is we can create runbooks. So all a runbook is just a playbook. It's as we do stuff, and again, I'll show you runbooks during the demo, as we perform operations, as we retrieve data, as we look at different aspects of the digital twin, something we call a data view. So data view enables us to overlay onto our maps just the information we're interested in. Maybe we're interested in OSPF information or ERGRP information just for that particular point, or actually spanning tree. Oh, we might be looking at some switches and think, oh, how's spanning tree running? Oh, I'll raise a spanning tree data view just to view that. As we do that, it creates this runbook. And so you can use that, especially if you're troubleshooting something very complex, you can use that to actually help your more junior engineers. But I'll cover that later when we do the demo. And so we call this our reference workflow. So this is how automation helps. And again, I'll be demonstrating this. In fact, this is the demo really, but as a PowerPoint. So the first thing is triggered response. So one of the things I will actually show you, one of the things Mark and I will show you very, very shortly, is how something like SolarWinds, it doesn't have to be SolarWinds, it could be any tool really which can get a hook into NetBrain's API. It could be SolarWinds, ServiceNow, yeah. Could be ServiceNow, could be a ticketing system.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be your monitoring solution. But again, if you think about this, it's this partnership, yeah, because your monitoring solution, that's got full visibility of the data. That actually sees the data plane. NetBrain's control plane. So you've got your wonderful monitoring tool like SolarWinds, which realizes there's a problem. Oh, my application's running slow. There's a particular issue with this particular traffic. Oh, I'm seeing loads of retransmits on the network. And that can then trigger NetBrain, and it can say, oi, NetBrain, can you create a map, please? And it will talk to NetBrain using an API, map the path between source and destination, or just the local area, depending on how you've configured it, and then say, oi, NetBrain, what I want you to do, and you can see this on the right, execute a runbook, perform these troubleshooting steps for me. And that's done right at the time the problems occurred. And that's really important because you don't want to miss it. Problems come and go. Yeah, you want to be able to get the problem. And again, we'll look at this later, but you want to be able to troubleshoot the problem or gather the information about the problem at the time the problems occurred, not later. And then you can go in and your engineer can come in and he can actually perform additional steps himself. He can gather extra data. He can run QApps, data views, and we'll look at all of that later. But this is the interactive bits where the engineer is using that data and using the map, but he's doing stuff. And again, I'll show you that all later. And then there's collaboration, and that's really important. So users can collaborate together, and then proactive, so you can ensure that you learn from your mistakes.
And for me, that's a big part of this. We already touched on it in terms of that empowerment, providing that frontline service desk, the cheapest technical resource you've probably got in the organization that's doing that front visibility, taking that monitoring alert, but then moving that into a runbook where that guru has dictated, this is the information that you want to then go and review, identify from the output, whether you do something else, whether you need to go on and pass this over to tier 2, tier 3. That is the power of that information enablement.
Brilliant.
Okay, so kind of taking on from that position, what we're looking at here is a very specific use case for the SolarWinds Orion solution tied in together with the NetBrain platform. Clearly, NetBrain as a solution in its own right has a huge amount of capabilities, and people use it as a standalone solution. A lot of people I know on this call are existing SolarWinds users, and for those that have a monitoring solution of any type, this is all absolutely still relevant. So what we are looking at here in terms of a use case is this ability to identify that there's a problem in the environment. there are tens of thousands of reasons why something stops working in the way you want it to. That service application delivery is not performing right, it's not available, and the information to allow you to go and fix that is essential to determine how long that MTTR timeline exists for. So we've kind of got a nice simplistic view here on the screen where we can see that we've got detection point, we've got someone then getting involved and responding, doing some investigation, identifying what the issue is, resolving it, and then validating that they've fixed it. Now, what we also see a lot is the fact that this happened at a time and a point in reference where a user phoned up and said, oh, well, this telephone call was really poor, or the fact that, and you'll see on our demo that literally just after the football finished last night, an issue occurred on the network. Well, by the time somebody comes in the morning, by the time somebody gets the ability to drive into the data center or whatever the method of response is, that may have gone. And so then they get into this whole loop cycle of, well, okay, well, I've had a look, can't see any evidence, had a look through the logs, yeah, nothing's really surfacing. Okay, we'll have to wait until if it happens again. And it happens again, and of course it's going to happen at various times where that loop just continues and continues. So what we want to be doing is taking the solutions we're showing you today, the SolarWinds platform and the NetBrain solution, to reduce all of this time frame. And very much, this is about information. Yeah, SolarWinds is giving you data. NetBrain is going to give you data. It's going to present it in ways where it's providing true information. Well, together and certainly leveraging the automation means that when you have this issue, when we capture that extended data through the runbook, yeah, somebody's dictated already, go and capture this extended set of data for this particular issue, then you are empowered immediately to do that analysis investigation, and you're then empowered to go and do that response in a much shorter time frame. So hopefully we're going to be able to demonstrate that today, because this triggered diagnosis is an essential ingredient to that response. We are going to show an example of a dynamic routing protocol, but it can be anything. It's a configuration change that's caused problems. It's the fact that a device has gone down and now your routing is going a different way. The hardware module, the signal strength down the fiber optic cable was now reduced. All of these data metrics are being or should be being monitored for you 24/7 by your Orion platform. When you then need to do that investigation, there is notably a number of other data values that you want to look at, whether it's log data, whether it's doing show commands, whether it's a show command in Cisco. Dave, I know from your point of view, the wonderful thing about NetBrain is it creates that GUI. I don't need to know the different syntax between a Cisco device and an Aruba and an Extreme. It will just do it at the press of a button. Oh, yeah. And we could go on, absolutely.
You know you can, yeah.
Yeah, and I tend to.
And, and the worst thing is, it's not just about knowing the commands, but it's also being able to interpret the results as well for all these different technologies. And it might not just be commands. Some might you have a web interface, others would have a CLI. So it's actually in modern networks, it's this complexity of dealing with all of these different types of technologies, which is such a challenge.
Yeah, and when we were preparing for this webinar, it was the whole question of, oh, what's a K-weight? Well, if you don't know networking to that degree, then you have no idea. But if the runbook tells you if this metric is bad for a K-weight, this is what you do with it. So we'll see all of that. And what we also want to show you here today is, and we've said it a lot, single pane of glass. It's an absolute benefit. We talk about it, as I say, when we're talking to clients, new, old, because it's important to be able to create an efficient journey for users. So we want to be able to demonstrate that within the Orion UI, they're both web-based applications, we're embedding access to NetBrain function pretty much fully. Also, the fact that when we're in NetBrain is not a monitoring tool. It is not a help desk management tool. It's not an ITSM platform. So NetBrain has itself the capabilities to go off and grab data from multiple sources so it can present data in its interface. So creating this single pane of glass, yes, you have these single pane of glass, but you have multiple versions of them depending on the angle that you're attacking it from. So things like NetBrain will be demonstrating how we've created some what are referred to as data views to embed captured monitoring metrics, live data, not from the device itself, because maybe it's better to capture that from Orion. And essentially every single piece of data that is available in Orion can be presented in the NetBrain interface. So we want to crack on with a demonstration. So just one quick poll before we go on and do that. If I can ask you to get onto your poll response and put some things in there. So what we want to do here is identify what challenges are your biggest ones in the organization. These are going to fall into kind of information streams, process. So say if you would be so kind as to look at that poll and put some things out there. So it's good for us. We also like to kind of use these polls to kind of guide what we show in the demonstrations. And also a reminder, I'm just looking at the question panel. Please use the questions. What we show you today is our use case journey, but if you see something, if you're not sure what it does, if you have a particular use case that you want to raise, please raise it in the questions. At the end of the session, we'd be more than happy to answer those. Okay, so that's an interesting one. Out of date, inaccurate network diagrams. I can pretty much guarantee that any environment running Visio, the day after somebody press saves, then they're going to be out of date. And certainly network diagrams are an essential part of documentation, but they are a part of it. True data analysis and collection of information, serial number of data, all of the configuration, that is an essential ingredient to network diagram. So certainly we'll be looking at how that can be answered. Okay,
oh,
fantastic.
It's a pain. That out-of-date documentation is a pain as well. I remember I was running a PS project for a big distributor based in the Cotswolds, and I went there. Part of it was to install some of it was a one optimization device. The engineer went on site, and actually all of the patching and the diagrams we had were wrong. Somebody had a month or so earlier replaced the switch with something else, and it was all patched differently.
Yep. Absolutely, and this is it, isn't it? It's, everything we're talking about here is information, and as soon as that information becomes stale, then it loses its value, or indeed it hurts what you then do. If you're working with out-of-date data, you're going to make wrong decisions. Okay, so what I'm just going to do now is just bring over to the screen. Okay, so what we are going to start on here is the SolarWinds interface. Now, what I've created here is a dedicated dashboard to a particular network. If I show you my menu system up here, you can see I've created one for another site location, Manchester. There's another one back there for headquarters, because we want to have a particular presentation structure that befits our network topology or our service function. And so what we have on here is common information. We've got alerts that are active and in play for the devices that are part of, in this case, my network at the London site. I've got KPI metrics. First one, are we up? Yeah. Are we looking at good numbers? Well, this is all very nice. Have I got good response times? What my kind of utilization metrics, how much traffic is going through this interface at this time? What this compute resource? Anything that's relevant for the service functionality you're monitoring is relevant for these pages, and certainly for those customers that we've worked with, you're well used to kind of taking our guidance on creating intelligent dashboards for users. But the big piece that I wanted to show you here is the fact that we've got NetBrain embedded into this page. Surrounded by my KPIs, I could now utilize NetBrain. I could come up here and I could say, well, that's great, my network seems to be running okay, but the particular issue I've got is the fact that some user has said that they can't reach our intranet application. Well, okay, what's their IP address, or roughly where are they going to? Run an A to B path. That's a key feature of NetBrain. We've got these data views. Now, I'm not going to go into much detail here. That's for Dave. He's far more knowledgeable on NetBrain, and so we'll leave that to him. But certainly, what I wanted to get across here is this capability. I'm not having to leave my Orion screen to be able to leverage the functionality and power that NetBrain brings to my tooling estate.
It's also worth mentioning, whilst you're talking about this, you could also have you can customize this. So you're showing the whole NetBrain GUI here, but actually you could say within NetBrain, actually, I'm just going to allow someone to maybe view a particular map or a particular path. So you can actually control that. So you can have what we call an embedded map. So you can just actually just expose a URL and allow users just to access just a little bit.
That's a good point.
NetBrain functionality.
Yeah. That's a good point, actually, because you may just want to say, we've got 3 people that are responsible for London only. And so in Orion, I want to make sure that they only see the London environment, because maybe that's the secure environment that they have to be managing, and the same can be replicated in NetBrain. And also, as you say, with regards to what you embed into it. So what we're also going to have a look at here is our alerting. So we have created an alert definition. I could have a look at my active alerts. In fact, you saw it on the previous screen. And what we have here is an example of an alert that was fired 12 hours ago at 11:02. Well, I know for one fact that I wasn't in any position to be working last night after the game. So let's go and have a look and see what happened here. That was nerves, by the way. I was too nervous and stressed from the game. So what we can see here is an alert fired and was triggered on, in this case, a routing neighbor issue. Okay, now this could be any of the dynamic protocols that are relevant. And so what we can see is the timeline of what occurred. So the alert triggered, we wrote to the SolarWinds event log, and then what we also did is we made an API call to NetBrain. Now this is an important thing. This is that integration piece, that automation piece that's saying, when this issue occurred, go and do a whole bunch of data collection in NetBrain, so that when we do the analysis, we've got that point in time reference. So we shall see that in action. What it also did is created a link. So down here, I've got embedded in this, and at this point I could take that URL and look at that in more detail and do this analysis. Now, this alert, again, I may have seen this from this page. In fact, oh, not this page, but this page. In fact, I did. I saw it in my active alerts panel. I know this is here, and immediately I've got the reference to go off and do this analysis. But actually what I'm going to do is hand over to Dave here. So I'm just going to make you presenter, Dave, give you
Thank you very much. So I'm going to show my screen. I just need to show which screen. So I want to show this screen here. Okay. So you should all be able to see my screen. Now what I'm going to do, because my screen's over here, I'm going to mute my camera. Otherwise, you'll just be looking at my ear, which you don't really want. So let me mute my camera just for now. There we go. And let's have a look. So thanks for that, Mark. So what we were looking at there was some of the alerts which had been detected by SolarWinds, and that's the aim really of a monitoring solution, such as SolarWinds. But again, it doesn't have to be SolarWinds. It could be a different monitoring solution. But the beauty of things like SolarWinds is they're looking at the traffic, and they can alert you to any problem in the network. And if there's a particular application or a traffic flow which isn't behaving properly, you can be alerted in real time. But the thing is, that's fine. But then really to get the best out of it, you need to be able to troubleshoot in real time. It's the old TV repairman issue, which is, again, if you're ancient like me, you'll be able to remember when TVs broke, you'd call the TV repairman, he'd come and try and fix the telly. But by the time he'd arrived, the problem had gone away, and then he'd go, and then the problem would return again.
You're showing your age. We're a throwaway society now.
But networking's it's quite similar. You have a problem, maybe there's a load of retransmissions or something like that coming from a server or whatever, or routing issue, but you want to be able to gather the information right at that point in time. But actually, a lot of the time, something will maybe sit in a ticket, and somebody will come maybe an hour or so later when the problem has maybe changed. And this is where triggered automation's got real power. So we can see here under the API triggered tasks. So this is within NetBrain now. So I've logged into NetBrain just to show you, and I just went down here and I clicked the API triggered automation manager to bring this up, and I just prepared it ahead of time. And you can see, so Mark was mentioning, if I look here, last night, you can actually see, we mentioned around, there you go, 2 minutes past 11, there it is. So you can actually see the event that had been triggered, and you can see there's been some other events as well, and these have been triggered within NetBrain. So what we actually did within NetBrain is you can create something called a stub. So what the stub is, it's telling NetBrain what to do when this particular API stub is called. In our case, we're going to map the device and its neighbors, but it's also going to execute a runbook. So we're going to have a look at that in a minute, actually. And that's quite key. So let me pull one of these up, and we'll show you what NetBrain's actually found. So actually now we're going in. Go on.
Well, just going to ask, so while that's loading, it's an important thing to highlight is that those API stubs are that guru's knowledge put into this runbook, and it could be for many of these outcomes. And so
that's right.
When you've got the out of the box, I'm sure you're going to show the templates that are provided. They are great starting points, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. So I can show that now actually before I go in.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so the beauty of a runbook is it's a playbook, and you can create them yourself. There's quite a few which are built in, but you can create them yourself. And in fact, as you do stuff, and we'll see this in a while, as you perform operations on the map, the runbook is built up for you depending on what you're doing. And what's particularly good about this is it enables you to codify your knowledge. So everybody, wherever you work, there's always a guru. There's always somebody that you go to when you don't know. And actually, this is a really good way of capturing that knowledge. And they can create particular runbooks for particular scenarios, and we'll look at this. So other people can then benefit from their experience. So you can see there's a few here, different types of highlighting for different things, ERGRP, OSPF. And you can create them also for checking. So perhaps for compliance, you can create a runbook checking whether particular commands are there, whether you've security hardened your devices. So what I want to do now, though, is I want to go back and just show you what we gathered. So we gathered this at the time the problem was discovered by SolarWinds. And so what this has done, it's triggered NetBrain. Again, the key thing is all of this information was gathered right at the time the problem occurred. So there's a few things actually that I can draw out of this. So let's have a start. Let's have a look maybe here. Look, so we mentioned this earlier, check K weights. So what NetBrain has done, it's done a number of things. I'm not going to show all of them, but I'll show a few of these. So one of the things it's done is it's checked the K weight. So with the ERGRP, all you need to know, it's a parameter, and it's just verifying that the weights of the devices are the same. And if they're not, it would go red. Okay, so it's checked that. And again, if I wanted to run that again, I could actually run that again and check it right now. What about the autonomous system numbers? So do we have, for example, are all of these devices within the same autonomous system? And again, you can see here, it's green here. So it's showing you the information in quite a useful visual way. Are the devices reachable? Do we have connectivity actually between these devices? And as we can see here, we have, this is all good, green, look, nice and green. So we can see all of the devices are reachable. So what's actually happened here, these are called QApps. So they're a quick automation application. And what's happened is that the QApp basically has been running on the network. It was triggered as part of the runbook. So when the incident occurred, all of these different QApps were triggered. And this particular one here basically was pinging all of the devices to verify that they're all available and that they are all they're all connecting. So basically, because it's automation, NetBrain was instructing all of these devices, oi, ping all of your neighbors. And if everything's good, if everything's reachable, then show that device as green. And there's other things as well we can do as well. So for example, I'm going to just go down here. We can also execute some CLI commands. So again, at the time the problem occurred, we could run some particular CLI commands. We could also do some comparisons as well. So we can say, well, actually, what I want to do is I want to perform a comparison now with maybe that retrieve live data result that was taken at the time the problem occurred with the current baseline. Now, what do we mean by the current baseline? That's quite important, actually. So every night, typically, again, you can customize this and you can configure this, but typically every night, NetBrain will rebuild the digital twin. So what it's doing is it's going to all of the devices that it knows about, that it's discovered automatically, and it's gathering loads and loads of metrics, things like routing tables, MAC address tables, ARP tables. If it's things like BGP neighbor relationships, OSPF neighbor relationships. So it's gathering all of this information to build a digital twin, and we can see all of that here, look. So what we can then do is we can actually use that information to help us troubleshoot the network, and we can retrieve live data now to see what it is now. And this is where it gets good. So in fact, what we can, I'm going to do this now actually. So despite what you can see, some of this is being done within the runbook, but actually I can run this now. So I can say what I want to do is I want to retrieve some live data right now. So I can go beyond the runbook. I can start to do things now. So everything before that was triggered automation. But actually what I can now do is I can run some automation right now, interactive automation.
And a good example of this, Dave, is where you've gone through the Runbook and you've got, okay, well, that's really useful. That's given me a direction to look at maybe, but there's more information that I now need to get.
And the beauty of that as well is, absolutely, and because the Runbook can point you in the right direction. Because this could, if you look here, before I can actually do this, if you look at all of these, this is checking all the obvious things for things like ERGRP issues. So you might think, oh, well, actually, based on something here, that's leading me into a certain direction. So I need to do something extra. So you can retrieve live data, maybe from a config file, maybe the routing table, or maybe even the interface information. Okay, I'll just pull those because we're looking at routing, but you could do the others, and you click run. And so what NetBrain will now do is it will go to all of these devices and it will issue the commands on these devices directly. And again, what's important to understand here, imagine doing this without NetBrain. If you didn't have NetBrain, you'd have to CLI into all of those devices. Maybe you'd actually have to, for more modern devices, open up a web browser and you access it via the API. So really, it really does depend on the device, and you'd have to know all the different commands and how to interpret all of those different commands. It's a little bit like, in fact, when you really think about it, managing a network today is a little bit like trying to use a computer without an operating system. It's like having to know all of the different machine code commands for all the different components. But NetBrain very much acts as an operating system for your network, so it's doing it for you. So for example, on this particular router here, it's pulled the config file, it's pulled the routing table as well. What I can do, by the way, whilst I'm in the config file, if I'm interested in a particular section, rather than thinking, oh, how do I pipe that again? What's the correct command for this particular operating system or this particular router? I can just say, well, I want to view the config file. I want to look at the interface configuration. That's what I'm particularly interested in here. So again, think about trying to do this without NetBrain. You'd be doing this sort of stare and compare. You'd have multiple consoles open, and you'd have to be trying to interpret that data yourself. And then what you can also do is you can say, well, actually, maybe I want to dig a bit deeper here. Maybe I actually want to execute some CLI commands. So you could then, if you wanted to, you could say, well, actually, I mean, there's a template so that you've got over here. I could pick a template and say, well, actually, what I want to do is I want to issue a group of CLI commands, the generic show commands here on all of these devices. Or alternatively, I could just issue specific commands like show IP route. And if I click that, if I add that and now click run, NetBrain will go to all of these devices in turn and it will issue that command. And you can see the results. But again, yes, you're issuing CLI commands, but actually you're viewing this all centrally from one central point rather than this multiple windows all open at the same time. Now,
sorry, Dave, while you're showing that, and it's relevant actually that on the right-hand side, you've got that green icon around the device. The extension of this is that because you can save this now and add this to that existing Runbook, you can say, actually, now I've fault diagnosed this issue, this is actually useful to add to this template. So if it happens again, I get this extended information. But also you can say from the data that's returned, whether that will then show as green, red, yellow on the map, so that I don't myself on the service desk need to understand what that table of content looks like. Yeah. The icon can tell me by the coloring.
Yeah, and all of this ties into the fact that this helps with collaboration, and the fact that this concept of retrieving live data, executing CLI commands, and doing a comparison, this is very much a sort of a best practice for what we call our three-stage runbook. But actually, for specific examples, you can create runbooks to actually help you troubleshoot very, very specific problems. But the other thing you can do, and I'd like to show you this because this is quite a nice new feature in version 10, is if you really are troubleshooting quite a complex problem, then you need to bring in some help. You need to collaborate with your colleagues. So you could click incident here, and you can say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new incident here. So I'm going to create an incident called big EIGRP problem. Okay, I'm being slightly frivolous here, but there you go. And I could put in the description, we are having a problem with EIGRP. Again, you probably want to put something a little bit more descriptive in. But now I've created an incident. And what's particularly useful here, let me just close these Go To Webinars tabs. What I actually want to do here under members is I can actually, I can create an incident portal here. So I can go over here to my portal, and what's particularly useful here is if you've got a login, which is what I've got, I'm going to log in here, but actually you can also set an access code. So users who don't have a login to NetBrain can access this. So this really helps with collaboration. So if I can, I think it's just Dave.Spence on this one.
This is the biggest test of the morning, isn't it? There we go.
I know, can I remember my password? There you go. I can, thankfully. But the beauty of this is that you can now share your information. So I could put in here messages, I could actually, incident has been created, members, I could invite somebody. So I could invite Mark. I could say, Mark Roberts, invite more users, Dave has invited you, and I could also, I can also invite, who else could I? We'll leave it for Mike for now. So I've invited Mark, and I'm going to click invite. Mailbox. Oh, never mind.
So that's okay. The mailbox is for that one has been full, so it's probably getting a response back.
Okay. Well, anyway, if the mailbox wasn't full, you can invite
demos. We love them.
Yeah. What you can also do, yeah, I know. It's funny. I briefly worked as a physics teacher when I was young, and we used to have a saying when we did demos to students that the science teachers used to say: if it blows up, it's chemistry; if it runs away, it's biology; and if it doesn't work, it's physics. And it's the same for IT, really. But yeah, so I could at Mark. I could say, Mark, there you go. Look, I could ask him here in the incident. Could you help with this problem, please? So I can tag somebody in the incident, and the beauty of it, as I do that, as I'm sharing this, look, it's appearing here. So your other user over on the who can access this web interface, they can be kept up to date on what's happening, and they can even post things themselves. And so, you know, this has been posted from the portal. And the other thing as well, in terms of licensing, so one of the ways NetBrain is licensed is the seat license. How many people are concurrently logged in? Well, actually, with the portal, you're not consuming a seat license, so you can actually expand this to people who you wouldn't normally want them to be logged into NetBrain, but they can actually keep an eye on this and they can follow this. Other things you can do as well, again, whilst we're here, is I could tag a device. So if I could say UK LON, there it is, that's the particular router. Well, actually, what I want to do, I want to, I don't know, put the ERGRP neighbor information onto the incident. So now I've got that. And if I just click this, it immediately brings up, well, there isn't any data available for that one. Let's pick something where I think we've got more info on. How about the routing table? That'll be better. That's something where we've actually got some data. Okay, because I know we've got information in the routing table. Here we go. So we can very quickly, very easily here, we can embed information. I can also, as well, if I've run particular commands on the runbook, I can say, well, actually, for this, I'm going to publish this information to the incident. Show IP route from the runbook. So I can now publish that onto the actual onto the incident itself. And better than that, if I right-click one of the devices, I can't do this now because I don't have a login, but I can open up the NetBrain Smart CLI. So I actually can go in, a bit like a putty session, but better than that, I can then publish all of the results of that onto the incident. So it really helps with collaboration. And you can do other things as well. You can actually put attachments on here. So if I wanted to attach a file, I can. If I wanted to put in a link to a particular useful web page, which perhaps was how to troubleshoot ERGRP, I can do that. I could add a map to the incident, so I could select a different map, maybe the Manchester map. Let's just do that, and now I can add the Manchester map to the incident here, or I could add extra information here. So it's this ability to share information, collaborate, and add extra information to the incident, to the problem you're trying to solve, which is the real power of this. Like I said, really good. That's a version 10 feature, so that's coming this year, actually.
Just one thing I love about all of this, before you move on to other things, is that these map links are unique. So the portal one that you just created, the map, the link you see in this at the top, and these therefore can be passed across automatically as part of this workflow to your service desk platform. So that when you've got that ticket, here's your links, go off, embed it, all of that information, all of this journey of data capture, analysis, collaboration is all embedded in the ticket.
Brilliant. The other thing as well, what I can quickly show you, because I'm conscious of time, so I don't want to spend too much time, because I want to leave some time for questions. If I go back here, let me just show you now I want to show you the other side to this. So NetBrain has this concept of sitemaps. So and it can build these automatically for you when you're when the benchmark is run. So this is the sitemap of London, and when you create these, you can just specify certain rules to say all devices which have LON in their name, they're part of the London site, and NetBrain will build this map for you. But once you've got that, there's a few things you can do. Remember what I was saying about the single pane of glass? Not the single pane of glass, the digital twin. We're coming to the single pane of glass in a second, actually. Thinking ahead of myself. But the digital twin has got a huge amount of information about my network. I mean, a huge amount of information. So I can take that and I can actually display that. So for example, I could pick if I wanted to, and again, if you look at these, there's a few of these which are built in, but you can create your own. These are called data views. So data views enable you to display onto the map just the information you're currently interested in. So what I'm running here is an ERGRP overview, because obviously we're looking at ERGRP. So we're trying to get some information out of NetBrain about ERGRP for these devices. And so it's just the information I'm particularly interested in, which I'm overlaying. And I can click on here, and it will show me information such as neighbor count, interface count, the route table count. So I've got all of this information right at my fingertips on the map. Again, this is why we call this a dynamic map, because this isn't something static. This isn't a Visio diagram. This is an enabler, if you like, a window into automation. Now, the other thing we can...
And if you save this map, then it's available forever. In terms of the data retention. So at any time you can go back and have a look at this, whether it's an incident that happened 3 months ago that's now relevant again, this is immediately available.
Yes, it is. And you can also, I'm glad you mentioned that, because you can also export it. So once I've got the map showing me exactly what I want, I could export this as an XMAP, which is a NetBrain internal format. I could export this as a Word document. And actually, by doing this, I can put lots of more useful information about the network diagram on here, things like configuration, interface stats, or actually export it as a Visio or even an image. So I've got a number of options here, but what I really wanted to show you before I close, I'm going to wrap up in a minute. There was one other thing I wanted to show you as well whilst I'm here. You can also run this, the overall health check. So the overall health check can run on this map, and it can show you if there are any obvious problems as well. So this is quite a nice little data view, which can very, very quickly show anything obvious on the network which might be going wrong. And again, what I like about this as well is it's showing you not just the device information, but also the interface problems. So again, if you look here, output errors, input errors. So if there was any problems here, if I was getting collisions or CRC errors, or if the MTU if I had some weird MTU settings on the network, I'd instantly be able to view that here. But this is what I really wanted to show you here. So one of the things you can do is integrate. This is called single pane of glass. So again, if you think about everything we've been talking about today, NetBrain focuses on the control plane. It helps you solve problems. But sometimes, so I was running a demo for a customer yesterday, in fact, and so the customer was asking, do you have what I'd like to see is perhaps traffic information. Can you show me traffic information? Now, if you think about it, NetBrain's control plane. So how can NetBrain show you traffic information in a dynamic map? Well, the answer to that is NetBrain can talk to something like SolarWinds, and we have something called a single pane of glass feature, which I said I'd come on to. And so what NetBrain's actually doing here with all of these data views, you can see this with the active alerts, is NetBrain is actually talking to SolarWinds. So it's saying, SolarWinds, do you have any active alerts for these devices? If you do, show me. And actually, what I want you to do, you can see this 4 here, I want you to paint the device red. So highlight it so we can see instantly I've got some critical alerts on these devices. Alternatively, I could look at syslog information as well. So again, what NetBrain is doing here is NetBrain is getting the information from SolarWinds. So it's talking to SolarWinds saying, please, Mr. SolarWinds, can you give me this particular information? And when I've got this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to display this on my dynamic map. So you can see here, we've got, as you might expect here, look, dual. Yeah, there's some issue. Gosh, there's an issue with the RGRP. Well, we knew that because that was the original. That was the original problem. So what's really important here is that using NetBrain's single pane of glass feature, you can pull information from all sorts of different devices. Could be Splunk. Could be anything really. It could be ServiceNow. So you might want to show things like, do I have any tickets raised with these devices? Or you could even query another system using the API. Perhaps one of the demos that I've done in the past, query Cisco TAC to see if there's any issues there as well. So there's a whole range of options here using this single pane of glass feature to pull that information from your other devices.
Yeah, and it is the case. So we are demonstrating this as a use case with SolarWinds integration, but essentially any application that has an API, whether it's an online SaaS like Cisco TAC, like Orion, like Splunk, like Service Desk, ServiceNow, all of them have these API interfaces to ask data, to action things like creating a ticket. So leveraging all of that capability really does bring a solution and a platform together for it. Dave, I don't know if you've got anything else to say, but we do have one question.
I hope you enjoyed that, by the way. But
that's fantastic. Well, good timing then, because that leads into a question while we were on this subject. So we had a question from Rajiv, who asked whether the results of the NetBrain live data can pull the SolarWinds Orion NetPerf event log data. Absolutely. So we've got examples here. There's 4 on the screen there with regards to alerts, NetFlow, syslog we're seeing, but that absolutely could be event data from Orion as well.
Basically, anything that you can get from the API, from an API, you can display in the map.
Yeah, fantastic.
Basically.
Okay, fantastic. If you've finished, I think we'll happily move on to some questions. Do you want to keep sharing your screen in case there's a question which is relevant to kind of demonstrate visually? Okay, so we've got a question from Paul. He's asking, can the NetBrain front end be installed on the same server as the SolarWinds web server? Technically, yes. I don't believe there's any reason not to from your point of view, Dave.
I normally wouldn't, to be honest. I would recommend it being a standalone server for resources.
Yep. Yes.
So the answer is technically you probably could, but you don't want to really.
For me personally, I'm an advocate of separation. Virtualization, containerization obviously allows a lot of cleanliness in terms of that now, so that would be my advice as well. Another question, can NetBrain document AWS network elements such as TGW, VGW, and DXGs?
Yes, let me show you. I'm actually going to jump onto our main demo environment here. So I'll just very, very quickly show you that. So yes, we can. So this was a new feature which we brought out in version 10. So if I show you, I've got demo overview. This is a nice map. So this is our internal NetBrain demo system, which is based in the States. And if you look here, this is not everything in the demo environment, but as you can expect, or as you might expect, we've got quite a lot of different technologies in here. So we've got legacy, we've got SD-WAN, we've got all sorts. But actually over here, look, we've got Azure and we've got AWS. And so we can see quite a lot of that actually. So if I go in here, look, and I specify AWS here, you've got a lot of visibility here in terms of the transit gateways, VPCs, subnets, all of that type of information. You've got visibility on all of that. And what you can also do as well is you can path it as well. So you can path from your legacy all the way through to your cloud environment. So yeah, good question. Thanks.
Absolutely, and it's a really good question because it just allows us to demonstrate that the network is just prevalent through many different layers. Now this kind of cloud SaaS environment kind of infrastructures come along. We need to have visibility of that. It is someone else's responsibility, but we are consuming it as an organization, and so we need to be able to monitor it.
Yeah. It's actually quite hard to get visibility over these type of networks without a tool like this.
If you start using the vendor tools and you start having a look at it, there's useful information there, but it's not designed for this kind of function to really knit together the whole of the network for on-prem remote users. Obviously, that's particularly relevant these days, and the cloud infrastructure as well. Okay, next question. Does NetBrain replace the network topology module in SolarWinds? There's a follow-on with regards will NTM be deprecated in favor of NetBrain. So for those of you not familiar, the network topology mapper application from SolarWinds is a discovery tool. It's a mapping tool, but that's pretty much it. It's a starter to create Visio diagrams or to visualize maps. It does not bring the interactivity. It does not bring the data collection functionality. It does not allow that dynamic functionality to be provided in that visual interface. It is literally just, here's a static Visio diagram that I created as a dynamic runtime. So it's not been deprecated. We're talking about two different vendors here. SolarWinds have their NTM tool. This is the NetBrain application. NetBrain does something completely different and moves it into way bigger areas. Does NetBrain have any change management functionality? Dave, do you want to take that?
Yes, it does. So actually, this is quite nice actually. So what you can do here, you can, if you want to make a change, perhaps maybe I've seen this with a customer actually, where what they wanted to do was they wanted to do a failover. Let's call this Dave's change. I'll just very quickly show you this. Okay. So actually, if you wanted to make a change to the network, the NetBrain change management module enables you to do this in a very structured way, in a very safe way. So what you can do is you define the change here. So you specify for a particular device what change I want to make, and then somebody actually has to authorize that. So before you can do anything, that needs to be approved. And then NetBrain will perform a benchmark before, so it will gather the data about your network before you make the change, and then you execute the change. Okay, but you can only execute it once it's been defined and once it's been approved. And then finally, remember there's a rollback functionality as well. You can take a benchmark afterwards. So what you're trying to do here is you're trying to be safe. You're doing this in a very standardized way, a very compliant way, if you like, where you've defined it, you're taking a benchmark before, you're executing it, and then you're making sure that actually the change had the desired consequences, that there were no unintended consequences of that change.
And this goes back to the slide deck where we were showing that MTTR slim down, where that validation process, yeah, I've made a change, happy days, walk away. No. You need to be able to confirm that the issue that you think you've just resolved has actually resolved it, hasn't caused more problems, and service is now working to the same level. So that benchmark is not just about capturing the configuration file, it's also about doing those, can I now reach this environment? Can I run the services over the network that I'm expecting to now? Good, thank you for that answer. I think we've got time for
Nikos.
Oh, go on. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, one quick question from Nikos. If I want to find out what happened 3 days ago, can I find out what happened in the flow?
Yes, you can. So actually, if I understand the question correctly, one of the things you can do, which actually it's quite nice actually, is you can run a change analysis report. So there's a few sides to this actually, because if you think about this, we're taking the daily benchmark, which is that digital twin, and we're doing that every day, and we can keep that data literally for months. So what you can then do is you can say, well, actually, what I want to do is I want to see what's changed over the last period of time. So you can go in here, and so this is one way of doing it, which is actually quite nice. You can say what I want to do is I want to view a change analysis report just for this particular network, and it will show you just for the devices on this network what has changed. So for example, I could go in here to a particular router, and I could see here there's been a change in the routing table, and I've got 7 days, 24 hours, 48 days. I can specify even a time range to show what's actually changed. And also what I can do as well, so let's say I've got a problem which I'm trying to solve. One of the really useful functionalities within NetBrain is the ability to map a path. So you can map a path from a particular source to a particular destination. And you can even specify things like the different protocol as well. So this is quite a nice way of troubleshooting. But again, you've got options here. Do I want to map this path live? Do I want to take it from the last benchmark? Or do I want to go to a particular point in time and map that path as it was yesterday or the day before? So yes, is the easy answer to that.
Also, I know when you were clicking on that baseline and live data, there's an option there to have a look at historic data as well, which is also right in that visual display, being able to do that. I'm conscious of time. There is just one more question. We can answer that very quickly. Can NetBrain work with static running config text files? So I believe that's where maybe there's a static text config file that can be imported.
I'm not quite sure. I don't quite understand the question there. Certainly what we can do, if you just, let's pick a device here. you can actually view the configuration file. In fact, if I double click this, it's nicer. If I double click this, it will show me the config file on here. And you've got to think what NetBrain's doing. So NetBrain, when it builds the digital twin, it actually SSHs onto the device, and it actually pulls that. It'll be doing things like show run. And this is where we've got this config file. Here we go. Yeah, so it's backing up the config file on a regular basis. And notice here, look, we've got things like passwords. They're all hashed out. And again, you can configure that. You can say, I want to hash them out. I want to hash them out in the database, or I want to hash them out just in the GUI. And then you've got this information. So actually, in change management, I can copy this back in again. Yeah, so I can actually revert using the change management tool. I think that's what you meant.
It's like, yeah, that's fine. I'm conscious of time for everyone as well. So Mick.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, on that note, wonderful. Thank you very much, Dave and Mark, for taking us through that today. And thanks everyone for joining us. We are available if any of the content today you'd like to discuss with our account managers. This recording will be recorded and shared, so please view and pass on to any colleagues you may find useful. From all of us, thanks once again. Enjoy the football at the weekend. There'll be a short survey to complete. And from all of us, enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Cheers, folks.
Thank you, everyone. Bye now.